Hi and welcome to Earthtide Studios. I'm Zach Knight, and in today's video we're going to look at how to mix synths in heavy music. Heavy music productions are often quite dense, and getting your synths to sit just right can be really challenging. So in this video we're going to have a look at how I approach that. We also have a free vocal production course that teaches you the basics of recording, editing and mixing your vocals. If you want that, just click the link below. But for now, let's get into the session. So we're in Cubase, and today we're going to be looking at the song Canvas by the band Color and Shade. Now, this track is quite synth heavy. It's got a very sort of orchestral soundtrack kind of sound to it. It kind of really sounds a bit like an introduction to a record or a song that would be played for a band coming on stage live. And there's a whole bunch of different theatrical things going on here. And I'm just going to break down what we've got here in the session. So the first thing I'm going to note is that we have a full band that actually comes in halfway through the song with distorted guitars, bass, drums, and a whole host of vocals. I'm going to leave the vocals out just at the moment for this video, simply because we're going to be looking at how to mix the synths with the music and everything. And synth-wise, we've got quite a few different things going on here. We've got this really beautiful piano down here, which has got a whole bunch of really nice reverb printed onto it, as well as this glockenspiel. We've also got a couple of ambient clean guitars here as well, a cello, some strings, two different lots here, as well as a couple of different other synths. We've got some things from Action Strikes here in Contact, as well as Damage, and another strike here as well, plus a couple of different reverse cymbals and sub drops, etc. So what we'll do now is we're actually going to start to look at what these individual synths sound like and how I've approached them in the production. During the production of this song, I actually made a few creative choices regarding EQ, compression, effects, etc. for different parts of the synths, simply because at the time it was just an easy way to approach it, also to save CPU during the mixing process. So some of the synths here you'll actually hear already have a little bit of processing on them, especially these ambient style synths here. So these are the two different clean guitars, and I'll just play them individually first. So what that is that's actually the part of the clean guitars which are also over here as well, being played into themselves, reversed into themselves, with a whole lot of reverb being stacked over. I'll just play this one as well. So this particular one is just the guitar part itself really pushed almost into 100% reverb, and then there's a whole bunch of different delay going on there, sort of blending it into itself. Further along down here, I've also printed a whole bunch of reverb and some EQ on this piano as well. When we were doing the production, I made sure that the velocity for all of these pianos, which were made with Alicia's keys in Contact, were all quite soft and basically built up all the way across the song until the kick in of the song, where the pianos were played a little bit harder, but the reverb was a lot less. And I printed them with the reverb Black Hole and as well the Valhalla Shimmer reverb, and filtered off a lot of the low and the high end, and went through and notched out any of the resonant frequencies that I found were sort of too over the top, and then actually just printed that. What I can do, if people like, is I can make a video in the future showing how to make these creative synth sounds and make them in your productions, and pre-print them before you get into a mixing session to save CPU. So if that's something that you want, please just let me know. So once you've got all of your synth tracks imported into your session and you've taken into consideration, you know, sort of any production elements that have been done beforehand, for your processing, etc. You need to look at how you're going to balance your synths in the mix. Probably the most important thing to consider is making sure that everything sits in a place where volume-wise and stereo space-wise, it's all going to fit. You can get very dense with synth production, and it's really, really easy, especially in these sort of orchestral things, to be able to go really over the top. I mean, have a listen to this part here, and then when it kicks into the sort of larger string section, you'll notice that it goes from being really, really sort of big and grandiose, and then it just shoots to just one really loud string section. So you can hear when those large strings come in there, which is when the rest of the band kicks in, you'll notice that they basically take up almost all of the space for the synths. So what's actually going on here is I've made sure that all of these other instruments here are sitting much softer so that they can fit together. I mean, we've got this cello is sitting at 0 dB, but itself, the actual track itself is only peaking here at sort of about -6 dB when it goes through there. And then this other string section here, you can see I've actually printed for this to be significantly quieter up until it gets to the, sort of larger kick-in section. But you could also just turn it down with automation. This track here, which is Damage, is already quite quiet, and I've also still turned it down 10 dB. Because it's quite, there's quite a lot of power in all of those different strikes there, so you want to make sure it's not going to be too loud when it comes in versus everything else. This glockenspiel, on the other hand, it's already pretty quiet, but it's got a lot of pokiness going on, so it's not necessarily too bad, but I have turned it down 10 dB. The same with these strikes here as well. They got a lot of low end to them, so you want to make sure that you don't have them coming out too loud. As for these strikes here, these are only sitting here about -9 dB. And then there's this big gong cymbal here that's actually also down at minus nearly 11 dB there. And of course, the piano itself is -11 dB as well. So as you can see, there's quite a few different volume things going on here to make sure that everything's sitting well within itself and, sounding a good balance between everything. So now that I've got a nice balance with these synths, let's have a look at the EQ that I've got going in this session. There's not that much EQ going. As I did say, I printed a lot of it during the production. However, the main thing that I'm doing is taking care of these strings. We'll just check out what's going on with the EQ on these. I'm doing all of my EQ on the Cubase channel strip simply because it's just going to save on the CPU, and I'm pretty happy with how this EQ sounds anyway. First thing I'm doing is I'm actually rolling off the low end at about 140 Hertz. Let's just bypass all the rest of the EQ. We'll have a listen to what it sounds like with that, and then we'll bring it back in. It's really helping to clean up all of that low end in the strings that we don't really need. The strings aren't going to be taking up too much of the low end. That's going to be for the other synths. Moving on from there, I really found that these synths were quite dark and definitely needed a lot more high end. So I've actually got a high shelf here at 3K, 5.5 dB, and it's really boosting the high end here. I've also brought the playback over to the larger string section here. So we'll just have a listen to what it sounds like with and without the high shelf. Much nicer with that extra high end there. It really helps the strings sound a little bit brighter and push through in the mix. Now, there were a few resonant frequencies that I found that were just causing a bit of issue here for the strings too. Around 700 Hertz, I notched out 8 dB, and around 850 Hertz, I notched out another 8 dB. So what we're going to do is we're just going to play that section, and I'm going to turn them on and off. So currently we've got them on. It makes quite a big difference and definitely helps you be able to turn those strings up quite loud and then still not have issues with, too much buildup of resonant frequency. The other track that has EQ on it is the second string track here, which is the staccato part that's doing quite a lot of bouncy movement. And I've definitely wanted to control a lot of things in here. So we'll have a listen to this now. And I'm going to bring in the high pass filter that I've got here, which is rolling off at about 140 Hertz as well. Just really helping control that low end. We don't really need that in the string part here. I did also notice that these strings were also just a little bit dark as well, but I didn't want to do a whole big shelf for these. So what I've done is I've actually just boosted a bell here at 9K and 4.1 dB. We're just going to turn that on and off and have a listen to what that does. It's really making quite a big difference there and helping those strings sound a lot brighter and push through in the mix. There were also a few resonant frequencies in this string part as well. And so I've notched out 730 Hertz here at 5 dB and 830 Hertz here at 8 dB as well. Let's just put those on and then bring them off and we'll have a listen to what they sound like. And now I'm going to turn all of the EQ off except for this high pass filter here and then bring it back on again. Only a few minor moves, but it's making quite a large difference there. The only other EQ move that I've got going in the session as well is on these strikes here, where I have just got a small bell here at 200 Hertz just to give them a little bit more of a boost. That's just helping them get a little bit more punch to work with the rest of the track. Once you've got the EQ of your synths under control, it's really important that you make sure that you have a consistent maximum volume that they're going to be in context with the rest of your mix. So what I've done is on the synth bus here, I've got the Waves L1 limiter here, and it's just shaving off a little bit of the volume here, attenuating, not too hard, but just making sure that these synths get control. just helping to control them there and attenuate, but just not too hard, because obviously you don't want to push too hard with your limiting, especially when you've got such beautiful sounds like these. Now, as discussed, there is a lot of different effects that have been printed into these synths already. I've gone through some of these different effects in some previous videos, but just to confirm, I am using the Black Hole reverb here by Earthtide. You can copy this preset here. This is one that I've made myself. This is probably my most used ambient reverb. The other reverb that I printed onto the piano and some of the guitars was Valhalla Shimmer as well. I've gone with the big reverse preset here and adjusted it a little bit to taste. Feel free to copy these as well. And the only other effect that I'm running here with these synths is the Waves IRL Full Stereo plugin here. I've got this currently on the large plate preset here. It's off one of the Brocasti M7 IRs. And I've just got this running here with the Glockenspiel, and I've got it running at about -10. Let's just have a listen to how that sounds. Really, really, really tiny little bit of reverb there to help those glockenspiels sound really nice. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to play through halfway through from this synth section here, and then I'm just going to play it through to the end of the track so that you can really hear what all of this mixing is doing for the synths here. So there you go, a couple of tips to be able to get your synths sitting just right in your productions. I'd also really love to hear how you've been approaching synths in your productions lately. Pop a comment below and let me know. Don't forget about our free vocal production course, and subscribe so that you can see these tutorials as they come out weekly. And most importantly, take care of yourself, have a good time, and take it easy. Bye!